Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. I'm really excited to bring you today's video. If you enjoy my content, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Let's get started. In the early summer of 2017, a group of tourists from Germany set out toward the remote Sahara Desert, located between Egypt and Sudan. This wasn't an ordinary trip. It was an exciting exploration. Led by their guide, they were equipped with maps and advanced GPS devices, confident that everything would go smoothly as they ventured into the desert. With high-tech tools and an experienced guide, the chances of getting lost in the desert seemed almost zero. Everyone in the group hoped that the adventure would be nothing short of a unique experience and that they would eventually return home safe and sound. However, the desert showed no mercy. Time works differently in the desert, and the heat can quickly wear down a person, clouding their sense of direction, turning the survival struggle into a disaster in the blink of an eye. They had set off in the early hours of the morning, marching through the endless dunes, filled with the spirit of exploration. Their eyes were wide open to witness the sheer magnificence of nature, yet nature can always be unexpectedly harsh. As the sun rose higher in the sky, a hint of worry appeared on the guide's face. Something was wrong. Shortly after, the guide's behavior behind the wheel of the lead vehicle became erratic. A sandstorm rapidly gathered, reducing visibility to zero. They lost signal, and the GPS devices malfunctioned, leaving only the barren, treeless desert landscape. The guide reassured the group, telling them that this was only temporary and that they would soon get the situation under control. But within hours, things took a terrifying turn. Several hours later, the storm subsided, and the group began to calm down, but the guide's health was rapidly deteriorating. The harsh desert sun had taken a heavy toll on him after the unexpected ordeal. As mental and physical exhaustion took over, the guide passed away. In that moment, the group realized they were alone in the desert. They had no vehicles and no one to help them. For a moment, they were unsure of what to do, but the only option for survival was to rely on each other and their instincts. Everyone struggled to stay calm. None of their technological devices were working, and the maps were inadequate. Everything seemed to blur under the sun's relentless heat. As the hours passed, the group members desperately searched for water while fearing they might get lost. The desert had transformed from an adventure into a fight for survival. The loss of the guide shattered the group's hopes, but they had no choice but to find a way to survive. Every kilometer they traveled offered only more sand, heat, and uncertainty. Now, no technology or guide would be enough to keep them alive. Deep in the desert, they were left with nothing but their instincts and trust in each other. The death of their guide was not just a personal loss for the group. It also meant losing the one reliable source for their survival. In that instant, the group members found themselves in a desert, consciously unsure of how to stay alive. They no longer had a leader to show them the way or the calm of an experienced guide to rely on. At first, everyone was in shock. Just a few hours earlier, they had thought their guide was managing the situation calmly with everything under control. But now they were suddenly alone in the desert. Phones couldn't pick up any signal. The GPS devices were useless due to the sandstorm and malfunctions. All that remained was the desert landscape, with no clear direction to go. The temperature was rising rapidly. The sun was nearly roasting the air. Within hours, most of the group realized that their water was running out. Although they had initially doubted it, the harsh reality soon hit them. Their water sources were gone. The first few hours were filled with mental chaos. No one knew what to do. Some people struggled to accept the situation, while others panicked. But as time passed, they overcame the panic and decided to take action. To survive here, they only had courage and reason. Although decision-making was slow, a few from the group decided they needed to stick together and move forward. Everyone watched each other closely, and a few tried to take on leadership roles, assuming certain tasks. One group, exposed to the sun for too long, needed to find shade. Others tried to protect themselves from the burning desert sun with their clothing, while also gathering desert plants for food. However, with each passing minute, the need for water became more and more evident. The desert sands not only drained, the heat But they also slowly wore down the morale of each person. On the other hand, some members of the group started to think they might be lost, with no hope of survival. But no one wanted to give up. They might have lost their guide, but they knew they had to do something. All that remained was the desert, and they had to make use of the limited resources it offered to survive. Some ideas were shared on how to find water. A few examined nearby desert plants, thinking that some might contain water, while others could help them stay alive. A group of others realized something even more important. At night, the desert was much colder than during the day. If they could survive the night, they would lose less water overnight. As the night approached, finding a place to spend the night became vital. It was not only crucial for survival, but also as a form of morale, for they needed to stay together. At this stage, mental strength had become just as important as physical strength. A group of people tried to find a safe place deep in the desert to spend the night. From that point on, it became a test. The desert would challenge not only their physical endurance, but also how strong their minds were. At times, how long could a single individual endure? But as a group, they found that moving together gave them hope for survival. This was not just a test of survival, but also a test of the trust the group members had in each other. A group united for survival, fighting against all odds, tried to keep their hopes alive. And in the depths of the desert, in an environment where only courage and determination remained, perhaps the only thing left for survival was their faith in each other. As time passed, life in the desert became even more difficult. In the first few days, everyone still had hope. At night, they found some relief, and during the day, they tried to stay energetic and find solutions. But the desert slowly began to drain their patience. Even though the temperature dropped at night, their bodies were still struggling with the extreme heat. The scorching heat of the day, combined with the night cold, became another danger. The temperature difference wore down their bodies, with both sides of the desert pushing the limits of their fight for survival. During the day, the sun's intensity rose to 50 degrees Celsius. Every step left a trace in the sand, like a knife, cutting into the ground. The sand sucked their shoes in, sweat burned their skin. Everyone tried to find water, gathering something from the plants to provide temporary relief, but it wasn't enough. Water was scarce in the desert and had run out. The remaining water was minimal, providing little relief. Looking into each other's eyes, they felt the thirst. This helplessness could have turned into anxiety, making the situation even worse. In each of their minds, the question, "What will happen if we can't find water?" lingered. But they were afraid to voice it aloud. Sandstorms, however, were an ever-present threat, ready to strike at any moment. Suddenly, the wind's power increased and everything around them disappeared. The sand filled their eyes, throats, and noses, making it hard to breathe. Each storm pushed them a step further into the unknown. While the storm created fear on one hand, it also fueled the hope of survival on the other. What if a signal or help comes to get us out of here? They thought. But there was not a single sign in sight. They had lost their sense of direction. The desert had made them forget which way to go, which step to take. After the sandstorm, the night darkness descended. After the scorching heat of the day, the night posed an entirely different threat. As night began to fall, the desert's darkness seemed to engulf everything, swallowing them whole. Not being able to see anything in front of them made them feel even more isolated. Mental fatigue and the continuous loss of their sense of direction were making it harder for the group members. As the cold of the night wrapped around them, the desert's silence became frightening. Every moment, they struggled to get through the night and face the next day. Using only their survival instincts, they tried to take another step forward. At the end of each day, the end of one day felt like a kind of relief, but it also symbolized a new beginning. Every new day came to present the same challenges once again. Every step forward became a hope that kept them alive. The desert was becoming more and more cruel with each passing day, pushing not only their physical but also their mental limits. Their eyes began to focus on each other. One group, holding on to each other, fought to continue living. As the challenges increased, their bond with one another grew stronger. There was still hope within them. Perhaps the one thing that could ensure their survival against the harsh face of nature was something simple: their trust in each other, and their unity. Survival was tied not only to the environment but also to each other's strength. The desert was slowly shaping them, pushing their boundaries both mentally and physically. Yet somehow each person found the courage to take another step under these harsh conditions. Every step they took strengthened the survival struggle of this group, lost in the desert but never giving up. As the days passed, they began to understand once again how merciless the desert was. Water sources were depleted, and their bodies were rapidly battling dehydration. Every passing hour further diminished their chances of survival. The cold at night and the scorching heat during the day were wearing them down physically and mentally. The constantly changing weather conditions made them lose their sense of direction, and at times, their hope as well. Initially, survival seemed impossible, and the only question on everyone's mind was, what will happen next? However, they continued fighting not to fall into despair. For a moment, they realized the existence of the resources nature had provided for them. One of the basic conditions for survival in the desert was learning to make use of the minimal resources nature offered. This was something they had never considered before, but they understood that they had to do something. Reluctantly, desert, plants and insects, the simplest sources, became the only things that could keep them alive. First, they began observing insects. To survive in the desert, they needed not only water but also food. At night, they followed the movement of the insects, especially the insects that appeared at night, slowly protecting themselves from the sun, could be carefully caught to relieve their hunger. By paying attention to the places where the insects moved slowly and headed toward the ground, it became easier to hunt them. This was another cruel face of the desert. While fighting for survival, they had to take advantage of every small opportunity that would help them survive. Desert plants formed another resource they turned to for survival. Under harsh conditions, they started observing how desert plants managed to survive. A few desert plants stored water within themselves, which they could use for their survival. These plants often contained water under their tough outer shells, which helped meet one of the group's greatest needs. As their thirst grew, every drop of these minimal resources became vital for the group. Over time, plants, insects, and other natural elements turned into not just survival tools, but also sources of hope with each new day. Every small food and water drop they found slightly improved the group's morale, increasing their hope of survival. One group had learned enough survival strategies. Some used the water from plants while others caught insects, trying to help everyone survive. The tourists, mentally and physically exhausted, continued to live by holding on to each other and using the minimal resources nature offered. The challenges posed by the desert once again highlighted how tough the struggle between humans and nature could be. But at the same time, nature offered them a small chance to survive. It was at this point that their survival instinct kicked in. Every step, every drop they found, added one more chance for their survival. In the desert, this group, with patience and determination, discovered how much effort and willpower it took to survive. The desert didn't just push their physical boundaries, it also tested everyone's mental strength. They had reached the 40th day, and with neither a signal nor help from the outside, each passing day further narrowed the limit of what they could endure. The growing thirst, insufficient nutrition, and extreme heat were wearing down their bodies, and they were experiencing a mental breakdown as well. Each person felt their bodies weakening. But the real battle was on a mental level. At the beginning, the group showed strong determination to stay together and find a solution. However, as time passed, hopelessness began to creep in, and thoughts of personal losses became a heavy burden. Like dark clouds in their minds, many were left alone with the fear of losing their loved ones. Some wanted to believe that this nightmare wasn't real, as if one day someone would come to rescue them. Others were struggling to take just one more step, to give it one more chance. But with each passing minute, their bodies and minds fought even harder. The group of tourists, stranded in the desert, was battling not only the challenges of nature, but also the dark emotions within them. However, the place where the group members found their strength to survive was actually in their solidarity. Mentally exhausted and physically pushed to their limits with every passing moment, these people somehow managed to hold on to each other and stay alive. What they realized was that survival wasn't only about dealing with the challenges of nature, but the power they gained from being together and supporting each other was the most crucial factor in staying alive. The lack of external help for days had turned the solidarity within the group into a lifeline. As some people succumbed to dark thoughts, others tried to keep them together. Whenever someone's morale dropped, others encouraged them, and instead of silence, they spoke to each other, trying to keep their spirits high. Slowly, a group of people began to form an emotional bond in addition to the physical struggle for survival. In an environment where people started to draw strength just by looking at each other, these small gestures became one of the most important reasons for survival. Mentally and physically exhausted, trust among them slowly grew. Those who helped each other, those who encouraged one another, succeeded not only in surviving but also in carrying a sense of hope. At night, when darkness fell, being together didn't just cool their bodies, but also gave their souls a bit of relief. They slept in each other's arms, each one trusting the presence of the other and deciding to take another step into a new day. Under the harsh conditions of the desert, simply being together, strengthening solidarity in difficult times, and increasing determination offered the group members a chance to survive. Their trust in each other helped them find the strength to endure and somehow stay together. Indeed, for a group of tourists lost in the desert to survive, love, trust, support, and solidarity were among the most important factors. On the edge of mental collapse, the strength they found by uniting against the harsh conditions of the desert was what kept each individual in the group alive. At the end of the day, their bodies were exhausted, their spirits strained. But the surviving group members finally reached the rescue teams. In those moments when they had felt completely lost in the desert as though they had lost all hope, a final ray of hope had appeared. The search teams had performed a miracle. The group lost in the desert had found life once again. When the rescue teams found them, their health was in poor condition. Their bodies were severely weakened due to water loss and malnutrition. Their skin was beginning to dry out from the sun, and their muscles were extremely fatigued. However, they had managed to survive. The horrific 40 days they had spent in the desert had become a symbol of their survival struggle. As the rescue teams administered first aid, the group members felt the peace of survival while also trying to shake off the shock of everything they had experienced. What they had gone through in the desert had deeply affected them not only physically but also mentally. While many experienced the relief of rescue, they were still mentally haunted by the trauma of their time in the desert. Yet, they had survived, somehow. It was a miracle. During their time in the desert, they had pushed all physical and psychological boundaries. Each of them had learned to endure the challenges of nature and life more powerfully. Not only had each individual survived, but through their bond with one another, they had also gained one of the greatest rewards of their survival fight. In the middle of the desert, lost and feeling so alone, each other's presence was the only thing that held them together. But in the end, this experience had shown them that survival is not only a physical battle, but also a mental one. Rescue became a symbol of a new beginning. The desert had taught them the strength to survive even in life's hardest moments, showing them the meaning of courage, solidarity, and hope. At the end of each passing day, every moment they experienced, the struggle they put forth to survive, took them one step further. But now the desert was behind them and only the memory of this struggle remained. The marks left by the desert still lingered in each of their souls, but at the same time, it had given them the strength to survive, the trust in each other, and the bond they shared. After the rescue teams found them, the surviving group members once again understood the value of life. The desert had shown them not only the challenges of nature but also the strength within humanity. And now, with this experience, the survivors had earned the chance to start anew, despite all their pain. In the environment of the desert, where survival had once seemed impossible, the struggles they endured and the victories they achieved opened the doors to a new life for them. The tourists who had gone missing in the desert had left behind only memories, but life was now offering them a new beginning.